everyone, welcome back to Colours from Australia. So this week's video is just going to be me talking about a few different points, because I've had someone reach out to me this week with some pretty devastating shrimp losses. So I just thought I'd make a video just to go through a lot of things that are toxic to shrimp. Copper is really toxic to shrimp. So that includes copper in foods, copper in fertilizers. Obviously you're not going to be wearing copper jewelry, but if you did, that's also toxic. So eliminating copper is really good. A lot of plant fertilizers have ones that are, for planted tanks only, and then shrimp safe. So the shrimp safe one has extremely low limits or no copper at all. This person in question used a lot of fertilizers, not realizing they had a lot of copper in them, and they wiped out a whole colony of shrimp in over a day, just about a day and a half. They all died. So you've got to be really, really careful. So sort of number two is going to be having clean hands. A lot of people overlook this a lot, actually. So if you go to work, you're working all day, using your hands, touching a lot of different surfaces, and shrimp are really sensitive. So I always wash my hands and have a shower before I do my shrimp maintenance or touch my shrimp or do stuff in the tanks. And I find that greatly lowers the risk of any bacteria or any dirt or detritus or oils that are on my skin getting into the shrimp tanks. And a lot of people, message me where they're a mechanic or, they're working outside a lot, and they get a few deaths, and I'm like, oh, what do you do as a day job? And they tell me what they do, and I'm like, oh, make sure you wash your hands super thorough. And then they start washing their hands extremely well before doing the shrimp or wearing gloves as a barrier, and then their shrimp deaths go away. So that's another thing to be really careful of, is work out what surroundings you're working in. And little things you don't think that are small at the time but add up. And then a third thing is, when you're using your utensils, you want to sterilize them tank to tank. Because if you get a tank that gets rust disease or any type of disease, and you put a utensil in there and then you go to the next tank, well, you're potentially spreading it between tank to tank. And I've known of 4 or 5 different cases that people have messaged me over the years where, they've had a sick tank of shrimp with a bacterial infection, and they've spread it to like multiple tanks, or in one case, someone spread it to all their tanks in their whole shrimp room, and that was absolutely devastating. They lost well over 70% of their shrimp just from one little mistake they made. So I always use isopropyl alcohol. So I have nets for each rack and tweezers for each rack, and items that are only used on that specific bank of tanks. And every time I go between tanks, I put isopropyl alcohol, I put it in a rinse cup, I rinse it off, and then I use it to the next tank. And that way I'm limiting or reducing my factors that something could go wrong between my tanks. It's not what everyone would do, but for me, because I've got so many tanks and heaps of precious shrimp that I've spent years and years doing, I don't want there to be a mistake where I lose a lot of shrimp due to something that was preventable. If you have one tank at home, it's much easier to keep on top of it, or a couple of tanks. But when you've got well over 100 tanks like I do, you get problems with tanks that come up because you just have so many more tanks. So that is something to be very careful of. That includes like TDS pens, pH pens, tweezers, scissors, nets, anything that goes in and out of a tank, you want to treat it. And then the other thing is food. So when the shrimp don't eat the food, you get build-up of waste. And this isn't really a toxic thing, but it causes the water quality to go downhill. So a lot of people message me problems where they have some shrimp dying, and they send me photos or videos of their tank, and I see heaps of uneaten food in the food dish, or in their tank there's a lot of uneaten food. And that goes off over time. But it has a couple of different problems. Problem one is you get, organic matter in the tank, it's going off, it's decaying, and it's releasing poor water quality outcomes. But the other thing is, if the shrimp are eating the decaying food, they're actually ingesting food that's gone off. And shrimp are scavengers, so they'll pick through it and, still eat it. And, you're giving the shrimp poor quality food, like you're giving stuff that's gone off essentially, or it's deteriorated in its quality. And you can also get shrimp, that don't do well from that as well. So it's like a sort of dual-edged problem there. And you want to be really careful with that. And then moving on to the next thing is when you're doing a water change, is making sure the water matches the tank parameters. A lot of people message me with this problem, and it's very preventable. Just mix the water following my other YouTube videos I've made and information posts at Colour Shrimp Australia Facebook page. Is you can mix the water correctly, drip it in slowly, and you'll probably eliminate that problem. I'm just trying to put this video together to give you a bit of a perspective from my point of view, because I get so many people each week and each month message me a stack of different problems. I've come across a lot of different issues at hand, and I find a lot of them are quite preventable. It's either a lack of knowledge or a lack of discipline, or just knowing or not sure what to do and what's good and what's not. And you want to be really careful. So I'm just sort of making this video to highlight, a few key components. And then the other thing is making sure test kits are in date. Now, they do have long shelf lives, but a lot of people, if you're using a test kit, you want it to be accurate and reliable. And when it's not accurate, it's not reliable. And you're basing how you're mixing the water, or what treatments you're doing with that tank, or, what conditioning, you're giving that tank with new water. And if your test equipment's not accurate, then you're going to then make water that's inaccurate and not reflective of your tank. So I always suggest go test your tank water first, then prepare your new water. And even if your test kit's out or not, or your TDS pen's a bit out, or something's not quite, as accurate, at least you've got a reference to what your tank is. So if your TDS pen, for example, is reading 200, but if you actually calibrate it and it goes to 220, well, it's out by 20 TDS. But if your aquarium is saying 200 and your new water is saying 200, then even though it's out, it's a bit irrelevant because you're matching your tank parameters exactly. Where it would be a problem is if you just go off and mix your water to 200 TDS with the salt without testing your tank and just knowing that your tank will be roughly about 200, you're actually going to add too much mineral to it. So that's going to be a problem. Same with GH. If you test your tank water, it's a 7 and you mix a 7, then it's going to be okay. So you just want to be really careful with test equipment, especially, liquid test kits. They do have expiration dates, and once they go off, they start losing their accuracy. It's very noticeable in the API nitrate test. I find once it goes out of date, or you leave it in a hot room and it gets a bit warm, the accuracy extremely goes down a lot. So you want to be really careful. So I think the main things to take away from this video is mistakes do happen. I've made lots of mistakes myself, but it's learning from the mistakes, and it's taking a calm and systematic approach. So just keep that in mind when you're going to do stuff and you're going through stuff. It's not all doom and gloom. It's not all the worst scenario in the world. It's just thinking that, before I do my shrimp tanks, I'll wash my hands really well. I'll make sure there's no copper in the ingredients. I'll sterilize my equipment. If I've got a tank that I'm a bit unsure about, I'll sterilize all the equipment before I use it into another tank. I'll suck out all the uneaten food. I'll make sure all my test kits are in date, and all my TDS pens and pH pens are calibrated correctly, because all those little things add up over time. And then you can limit and reduce how much error you have and how much mistakes are made. So always remember, if you're going to do water change, do it slow. Make sure the water matches the tank. Make sure the temperature's right, the GH is right, the TDS is right, the KH is right. So make sure all that's matching your tank, and you should be fine. And then the last thing I'll say is the chlorinator. If you're running carbon filters, you're going to have very reduced chlorine levels. But not everyone does that. Some people just go get tap water and do Neo water changes with 100% tap water. And you want to add a little bit more dechlorinator than what's recommended, just to remove the chloramines as well, because they're highly toxic to shrimp. Myself, I run double carbon filters for all my tap water too, and my RO water, but I still put dechlorinator in as an extra safety measure. I don't add a lot, but it's just that little bit, you know, extra security knowing that I'm not going to have a chlorine issue with my water. So yeah, I just thought I'd make this video just to give a little bit of perspective and make it, you know, a bit more knowledge out there on all different issues of shrimp keeping, and hopefully you enjoyed. Next week I'll make a more regular style video with shrimps of photos, and I'll go through a really hot topic that I've got coming up, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.